Hello and welcome. It is Friday afternoon and it is time for your Power of 3D Story website teardown. But let's take a step back first. I actually want to go back and deeper than you might be expecting with the idea of storytelling. And that's the fact that storytelling is the expression. Storytelling is nothing without story. So before we talk about websites, before we talk about startups, before we talk about growth, let's go back. Let's go way back. Let's go all the way back to 1978. My parents and I had just moved from the south of England to the north. New job for my dad, new town, away from their support structure. We moved into what they both hoped would be their dream home. And my dad had always dreamed about having a Georgian townhome. But this Georgian townhome was crumbling, to put it lightly. Falling apart. The only safe place for a baby like me, 6 months old, was a bedroom in the attic. Not just up, all the way up. 3 floors, and if you were unfortunate enough to fall down the hole that was opposite the door of the attic bedroom, you'd go 4 floors down because you'd go all the way to the cellar. You can probably imagine that the bedroom door was locked. If you think about that, let that sink in for a second, right? The attic not only was a refuge with toys and blankets and a bit of peace, it was also a little bit of a prison because I didn't want peace. I was a baby. I wanted connection. But my mother was pregnant again, and my dad ended up losing that new job that moved us to this town, and he was on the hunt for another job. You can imagine the chaos that was everywhere. My mother, my anchor, was stretched thin, doing her best, but emotionally unpredictable. And that's where it all started for me. That is where I developed my earliest form of my superpower, pattern recognition. Trying to read the situation, sometimes to a fault. Trying to make sense of her, of everything. That was my first lesson in story. Not words, not fairy tales, survival. Fast forward to 1986, I started experimenting with keeping a diary. And then by 1990, it had become a daily habit, and I still keep that today. And in fact, I've got the 1990 diary right here. And there's also a 1994 as well. And there's a whole bookshelf of them behind me. And it's never stopped. Every day, handwritten. since February 1990. Turns out there are fewer people who've kept a daily handwritten diary for 35 plus years than have won Olympic gold or have climbed Everest. I'm not bragging, it's just proof. I have been writing my story and the stories of other people. I often joke, if you meet me and it's of any significance, good or bad, you're in my diary. I've lived the story, I've studied the story, I've needed the story. And that brings us to 34 years after 1978. It brings us to 2012. What happened in 2012? I landed my dream job at Microsoft as chief storyteller for a business division called Dynamics. And when I got there, I did what we all do, right? I Googled with Bing for tools, but I couldn't find what I was looking for. All I could find was these entertainment frameworks. And I started to panic a little bit. I'd never really experienced this before. Somebody had already laid the groundwork for me. And I don't want you to panic. You don't have to, because I've done all of this over many decades, so you don't have to. And that's really important for me because I'm obsessed with finding ways to simplify. I need it myself, and I know how valuable it is to others. So what does that mean for what we're talking about here? Well, I didn't have any frameworks, right? And I had to be an interpreter, and that's fine. I was getting paid for it, right? It was my job, and it worked, and it got bigger. I started getting invites from around the company to come and help other teams and do marketing training events and this kind of stuff. And that's when I had the first sort of inkling of the dream for what eventually became Go Narrative. But it wasn't until tragedy hit in 2015 that I really woke up. And that tragedy shifted everything. Within 6 months, I resigned. I spent a year at a marketing agency, learned how to run a small business, doubled the revenue, and then 2017, Go Narrative was born. And Go Narrative isn't about storytelling. It's about story. Because story isn't entertainment. Story is our operating system. It's how we survive, connect, and communicate and adapt with the world that's around us. I love how Will Storr puts it about how we're trapped in this pitch dark bone prison, our skull, and we take the sensory data and we build this world, and we live in this world, and we do the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in this world. And then it's also our API. So not only is story our operating system, every single one of ours, it's also the API that connects us. It's not only how we understand the world, it's how we share what we learn about the world. Why did I start today saying the things I said? It's because it helps you understand my world, and it helps you then eventually understand what I'm going to share with you and how you can use it. Greases the skids. So I've gone deep on this stuff, super geeked out on it, neuroscience, social psychology, therapy. Why? Because story has the power to change the world for better and unfortunately for worse. I believe in using it for better, and I believe that you can too. So today, join me, toss aside those entertainment frameworks, toss aside the hero's journey, which we're going to just leave in the trash for this one, and its 17 steps and its dark night of the soul, and leave behind those little abstract ones on the other end of the spectrum, the beginning, middle, and end. Abstract is complicated because you have to decode it, and you're busy. You're like, how can I use this thing? How can I do a better job at storytelling? Now that Matthew said story, not storytelling, how can I do a better job at understanding and using story? Let's get you to that rather than worrying about the frameworks. I recently went back to my mind mapping roots. I was inspired reading about how I used mind maps to get through grade school, and with everything that's involved in running a small business like Go Narrative, we're not on Microsoft. There's a lot on my plate, and there's a lot on your plate, right? And I was trying to find better ways, this combination of my bullet journal and my Twos app and my Duo app. And when I say bullet journal, I mean paper bullet journal. And I've brought mind maps back into that mix. And when I was hunting for a tool, because I didn't want to do it on pen and paper or even iPad and iPencil, whatever it's called, which I did do, I played with, but it's not the same as what software brings to the mix, what that innovation brings to the mix. And I went on a hunt, and I had a look at some old tools I used to use, Mind Manager. I looked at some new ones like, well, there was Miro, but that does other stuff, and Mind Maps is not really specialized in that. And I ended up, anyway, long story short, zeroing in on something called Simple Mind. And the thing I love about Simple Mind is it gets out of the way, just gets out of the way and lets me use the tool to do what I want to do. And that, my friends, is why between the complex and the simple, I found our Goldilocks. And our Goldilocks is what I'm going to share with you today. And it's what we're going to use to do our story teardown. Now, bear in mind, you can choose how deep down this rabbit hole you want to go. If you're a story geek like me, you can go super deep. If you just want a simple tool to get going, we've got that. But we also have all of the tools in the Storytelling for Action playbook. And there's about 9 frameworks in there. And we've recently launched a new framework called the Emo Pyramid, about how to tap into the emotions and to do that in a way that's a bit different to our Meet Your Customers Where They Are, which talks about morals, essential emotions, and truths. The Emo Pyramid talks about the levels of communication and what you need to do to get to those deeper levels. And we are going to see that today. It's our first new framework that we developed in like 3 years. I actively was not letting myself develop frameworks because I like to do it to simplify things, but also too many frameworks might not be simple. So I put the kibosh on that one, put it to the side. But recently, the Emo Pyramid was proving to be so important, how we think about communications and what drives communications. And we are going to see it today on this website that we're going to tear down. Is I just had to put it into a framework. So get excited because we've got that for you as well. We've got Goldilocks. Where does this all start? It all starts with heart. It all starts with something that somebody wants. This is the heart of story. Just like you right now, you want things. You want lots of things. You want happiness and success for yourself, your family, your friends. You want that promotion or to launch that new product. You want to get your startup from Series A to Series B. You want to get the oil changed on your car. You want to get the splinter out of your finger. We are swamped in wants, needs, in desires every single day. And so desire is where it all starts. You'll notice I'm not talking about things like heroes. I'm not even talking about things like characters. I'm not burdening with you with those things. I'm saying every story starts with heart, with this desire. And you can't want something if you're not a person. That is a part of the beauty of this framework. I folded the parts in to make it super simple. so you don't have to try and remember a big list of things. And the power of 3D story is only 3 things, and all of it is in orbit around this first thing, which is the heart. Now, hands up if you want something right now. Keep your hands up if nothing is standing in your way. What do I want right now? I want lots of things, not least of which I want to help you tap into the power of story so that you can unlock that next step in your company's growth. As a founder, whether it's a big milestone like Series A to Series B, there's so many milestones that are a subset of that. Even as you move through the process of post-seed, pre-Series A, Series A itself, which are just labels, quite frankly, your company is going through change. And when we go through change, we need things. We need help and tools to navigate that change. We need to make decisions. There's all sorts of needs that we have when we're in a business that is growing. To name but a few, your team. Your team needs clarity. Your team needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet. It's very different now when you've got 50 to 75 employees than it was when you had 10. As much as you are passionate about your business, as the founder, you start to lose your grip on the ability to manage all of the communications and the expectations with your team. And it goes the other way as well. Your team, any individual on your team has less time with you. They've got more questions about the things that are happening. What's another thing? Well, you may have saturated that initial market. Whoa, fantastic. It got us to $2.5 million, $3 million of annual run rate. But we've saturated it. We've got it all. What next? Right? Let's change. How do we go to that new market? How do we talk to that market? And as a growing company that has got product market fit and has made it through that first gauntlet of the early adopters, you've got to get into the early majority, and they act very differently. That's why Jeffrey Moore talks about crossing the chasm, and a lot of companies fall into that. And I don't want you to fall into that. And then there's investors, VCs, for example. And yes, the VCs want to see the numbers, and Series B is a numbers game. Don't get me wrong in any way, shape, or form. And those VCs want to see the numbers. But those VCs didn't grow up. When they were children, they weren't drawing bar charts because they liked bar charts. They want to see the numbers because of what the numbers represent, what's behind the numbers. And it's not just the wealth, status, and power that they want. It's, do you as a founder know what this other market wants, or your existing market, to keep serving it? You understand that so that you've got the tools in place to continue selling and to sell to the new ones who do not buy from you today. And even if you've done your homework, even if you've gone down into the smallest of cracks that you can think of, you will always have a blind spot. And I guarantee you that every VC or investor of any shape or form that's sitting across the table from you has been through this wall more times than you have. And they know that there's unknowns. And when they ask you, what about this market? You could say, I don't know, we'll go away and have a look at it. Or you could say, on the spot, perhaps you ask a few clarifying questions, you get a bit of information. That sounds quite a lot like this market over here. We've got a blog/article coming out next week that's going to use the example of wire coat hangers. And the inspiration comes from the 1980s movie Cocktail and a Wall Street Journal article that I read last week called Stealth Wealth. And if you're a business selling wire coat hangers and you're selling to hospitals and you're selling to police stations, and an investor asks you, how about hazmat response at airports? You may get enough just from that question to respond. You may ask a few clarifying questions. What type of hazmat situation are you talking about? Are you talking about regional? Are you talking about international? Okay, well that sounds a lot like how a city would have to handle any type of uniform management for firefighters. And in fact, firefighters also deal with hazmat. So we could look at the similarities between those two, and I would say there's probably also some non-hazmat opportunities within the airports that would bring it even on a par with what a city would be looking like with the non-hazmat needs within the fire department, for example, or the combination of the fire department and all the hospitals. So we know what that market looks like, and it looks roughly like this. How do you know that? Not because you're a great storyteller, but because you understood the numbers and you understand the story that represents the numbers, how cities function and operate within that, how fire departments, how hospitals function and operate. Now I'm giving this as a very high level example, but think about how that could apply to your business. What are those lookalike markets? And so the VC is going to want that too. And all this, again, is desire. Now I raised my hand. Why did I raise my hand? Well, and it's upstairs right now. I did actually have it out as a prop for today, but it's my Canon 5D Mark IV, which I've had for 8 years, and I love it. And I've got a Voigtlander 40mm f2 lens on it, and I use that as my travel kit. We travel a lot. We love to explore. Big trips, little trips, you name it. And the weight is starting to get me down, but it's also the fact that I like to also carry a drone and a GoPro. So my overall camera weight has increased. And so what do I want? I want to reduce that weight. Where have I found myself? I found myself looking at some potential replacements or supplements for the system. Maybe I go down to Glazers in Seattle and take all my lenses and I say, what would you give these for me for these? And if anybody from Glazers is watching, I know you go to the website first, you enter the information, you do that before you take it into the store. I've done the research. I've done my homework. And I go to a completely new system, like the Sony version, for example, or the Canon mirrorless system. Or maybe I supplement it with a small camera. And there's one I've got in mind, and I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, by the way, purely from my own research. And the A7CR is a very small rangefinder-like camera. I love the ideas of the Leicas. I don't know if the value's fully there for me with what I would get from it, based on my experiences of being a photographer for over 25 years, seriously, in any serious manner. And I am now in this place where I'm exploring these things. So I raise my hand. What does that mean, though? How do I make these decisions? How do you make your decisions? How do you, on the spot, help answer that VC question? Every desire we have has things that stand in the way. I'm having to research all these cameras. I'm having to potentially make a hard decision, right? Then this isn't a cheap thing, but I've had it for 8 years and I had my 5D Mark II for 8 years before that. So maybe now is the time to change to a completely different system rather than just supplementing with a smaller camera. These are decisions I've got to make. I've got to look into the products, got to ask other photographers. I've got to watch a lot of YouTube videos. I've got to have a conversation with my wife about the spend. And these are all things that stand in my way, because it doesn't matter how much money you have. And yes, this is very much a first world problem example, but you still want to do the right thing and you don't want to waste your resources, right? Because then you don't have any resources left. Things stand in the way. But the beauty of this is we're still anchored in the heart. It's something standing in the way of that desire, the difficulty in front of the desire. We're still anchored on that. It's still super simple, even with me going out into these examples, right? So that then brings in a fancy French word, which actually also represents something simple: the untangling of the knot, the act of untangling the knot. It's not about your solution. And as much as I want to focus on business story and business storytelling to help you, if we focus on the basics, it helps us avoid some traps. And one big trap is rushing into thinking that what we do is the solution. My choice of camera at the end of the day, or not changing, is my solution. And it would include more than just a camera. Maybe there's an adapter for existing lenses I've got, right? It's not the Sony A7CR, even if I go with that specific product. That's just a part of my knot. And so your job as Sony in that example, or you and your firm, is to help whoever it is you're talking to untangle that knot. And by keeping these very simple precepts, these basic core principles in mind, you are immediately set up to tell a better story. And I call this the power of 3D story: desire, difficulty, denouement. And it's actually available as the first chapter in the playbook. And the playbook is available on Amazon, but you can get the first chapter complimentary for the trade of your email. I guarantee you, we won't spam you. We'll send useful business story information to help you unlock your success. You get the workbook that you can download, print off. It's intended to be paper because I love getting away from the computer. I love breaking that. As much as I'm not doing mind maps on the computer, I am still doing a bullet journal, and I love that tactile aspect of it, and it activates the whole nervous system and it gets you away from screens. A lot of great benefits. And so the book itself has all of that going for it. But the download is available with that first chapter. And it's all about the power of 3D story. This is a powerful tool, a simple tool, a scalpel that will help you carve any story up. And because of that, it's going to help you then tell that story. Because the telling is useless if you don't have the thing, right? And that leads us to the next thing that we're going to talk about, and that is the home page teardown. So who are we going to pick on this week? We're going to pick on this week a company that cold emailed me and kept cold emailing me. Rippling.com. So when I look at a website, I'm looking at the first foot forward in public to the whole world of this company. If I never meet anybody from Rippling at an event, if I never have a phone call with them, if I never hear about them from somebody else, this is all I've got. And in our day of age, this is one of the most important parts of your communication strategy. So I look at this and I think to myself a couple of things. If you've watched the stream before, you'll know what they are. I'm looking for people and emotions. Do we see people? Let's see. Products, platforms, solutions, global resource pricing, employees, people. Get more done with Rippling. Increase savings, automate busy work, and make better decisions by managing payroll, HR, IT, and spend in one place. I do see congrats on the job offer, Kelly. Let's get you set up. So there's a person there. There's congratulations. There's level 1 at least of the emo pyramid I'm seeing here. When we think about emotions, we're not talking about an abstract, high emotional state. We're not talking about hate and love necessarily. we are talking about the responses that we have to the situations we find ourselves in, right? And emotions are our brain's way of figuring out the feelings we're having in our body. Think about the last time you were scared. What does that feel like? Maybe tight, maybe your whole body's tight, maybe you're straighter than normal, kind of a fight or flight response. What about if you're mad, angry, maybe you're crouching down, you're going to muscles again tensing it, but in a different way, right? Maybe some of those bigger muscles rather than the more agile muscles that are to help with stability that maybe come along with fear. But these feelings we have in our body, the splinter example that I gave earlier as well, the splinter example is also something that we can all identify with as a pain, right? We've got to deal with it. We've got to find a solution to the needle that's in us and is hurting us. So when I look at these websites, I'm looking for communication that touches on that kind of stuff. And it can be that pit in your stomach as you realize that you don't have something or you need something. And I don't see that here. I don't see it above the fold. As I go down, powerful alone, stronger together. I'll make some critiques on the language in a second. Pick any individual product suite you need. So products, so kind of brochure where you get a live demo. So product. What about down here? 50x more efficient at recruiting. Spends 75% less, saves 100K. Bear in mind, we do have two types of people that come to a website. We have people who are either completely fresh to the category in the company or some mix of that. And there's people who are closer to buying, right? I'm going to be looking at Canon and Sony's websites in a slightly different way to somebody who's just getting into photography. And you have to talk to both of those. It doesn't mean you can't use emotive language. So I'm not seeing much. I'm not seeing much of a personalization here, apart from this person here on the right, but it's all functional. Again, I'm not feeling anything. And from a language perspective, get more done. I mean, we used that language when I worked in Office at Microsoft. Increase savings. Every company says that. Automate busy work. Virtually every technology does that. Make better decisions. Often used in business type applications. Spent in all of it in one place. Again, Office comes to mind. It's not unique. It's not talking to me. So let's have a look at how we can break this down, shall we? What I've got here, if you can see it, zoom in a bit, is I've got the Go Narrative website story teardown, custom GPT. And I've got the link and I got a screenshot of the site. So let's have a look. Okay, so we're seeing similar. It might have some sometimes cached websites, or it'll pull in some different text. Activation verdict. So the above the fold experience is clear and concise, but it lacks emotional or physical resonance. Emo pyramid level reached. Level 1, basic communication. It's the what, right? We've got why, how, and what. Why we do what we do, how we go about doing it, process, and what we deliver. The visitor, there's nothing about what the visitor feels. Remember, this company cold emailed me several times, and they didn't do this in their emails either. So this is an abject failure of the company completely in all its communications. There's no narrative, let alone what we're talking about here. Stays in the kiddie pool, features not felt experiences. Power of 3D story, implied desire to manage a global workforce more easily. Copy misses a human craving behind that. Less overwhelm, more time for strategy, feeling in control, right? Start to see how this stuff might fit with how you think about your business. And if you're running a company, right, like Rippling, and you're trying to grow, Are these things going to be helpful to do? They're certainly better than what's there today. Difficulty. This is implied but not explored. It's inherently complex, but the site doesn't name the pain. No friction, no tension means no story. The heart of the story might be what you want, but it's the difficulty where it starts to come to life, right? Saying that you were driving to work and you wanted to get to work on time, pretty boring. But when you say that suddenly right beside you, there was this crazy driver who ends up crashing into, now we've got a story, right? So what about the types of things in HR that could be called out? Chaos, confusion, compliance, anxiety, managing global teams. Rippling flattens a narrative. That's kind of AI being a bit kind, to be honest. One global system hints at the resolution, but it doesn't show how rippling helps untangle the knot. It's not showing rippling as being there by the side, being useful as a part of this process. And it doesn't show the before or after. So here we've got the different levels of the emo pyramid. Basic communication. Next level would be motivation aware, right? What is the driving force behind why somebody is on this website? Or if you're going to cold email them, what can you say that's going to connect? Think about the spam you get, right? It's just communicating in a way that assumes everybody's ready to buy right now and is looking for the solution. I will Google it with Bing if I'm looking for something, or I will speak to ChatGPT, okay? If you're gonna come into my home, which is my inbox, you better have a way of connecting with my motivation. And it's not rocket science with AI. I mean, I use it all the time. We use it when we're having a prospect sales conversation or a coaching conversation, to build the profile of who we're speaking to, the company, understand their motivations, right? Level 3 is emotionally aware. This is where the things that how we conceptualize feelings, right? The stress, the worry, angst, you name it. And then there's the physically aware, right? The burnout, how you feel Sunday scaries, but thinking about going back to work on Monday, or the phone call you get from an investor, right? And how you feel in the pit of your stomach when the investor has gone to your website and it says, what the hell are you doing on your website, right? Why would I keep investing with you if that's what you're saying? You are not connecting with anybody. You're not converting people who are already potentially interested in buying. Now, to be fair on Rippling and anybody who runs a website, this is an easy thing to miss, and most companies screw it up, which is why I do this every Friday, because everybody needs help, pretty much. We run this regularly on our website to make sure we're doing the best possible job. In particular, anytime Matthew has the idea of changing something on the website, and that either gets done or ideally we think about it beforehand, right? I'm a man of action. What can I say? So recommendations. Let's inject some difficulty. Managing these things across time zones, all this stuff, we've been there. Chaos, right? It surfaces the mess. Then, to upgrade to level, that's the motivation, right? The motivation, not just communicating what you do, but the motivation of why somebody would even be considering you. No more 3 a.m. Slack messages from your IT lead in Berlin. No more lost logins. No more VC calls at 3 a.m. Rippling turns where's that document into it's already done. Ooh, can you see what that does? And this goes back to the API and the operating system. We get this. This is why this stuff works. And this is why AI is so helpful. Now this AI is built on ChatGPT and it's got a ton of our guidance behind it. It's coming up with some great suggestions that we could then riff on. We could pick out a bit more. We could go and we could pull. Hey, Rippling, do you have feedback from your customers? Send it over. Let's put it in this. Let's have a look, see what we can come up with. Do a consulting session for you. Take what your customers are saying. Listen to it. There's story gold in there. Feel the differences. Less whiplash. More, we've got this. Again, oh, I feel that, right? It's natural. And then getting into some of the untangling. Your new hire in Tokyo is onboarded, equipped, and paid before your coffee brews. Okay. What about overall scoring here? So 4 out of 12 for Power 3D Story and 1 out of 6 for Emo Pyramid. So 5 out of 18. Bright spots. Currently, clean and simple, logical proposition, potentially powerful, opportunities, show human pain, activate bodily tension, replace clarity as a concept with felt relief as an experience. You want to feel the relief of the splinter. People do not move to act unless they feel something. Unless they feel pushed or pulled. Unless something is hurting or there's a passion and a desire. And if you take my example from the camera one earlier and unpack that, what does that look like? Is that a push or a pull? Well, what did I say? I said, my system has grown, it's heavier. I didn't add to that, we do one bag travel. So when our family, the 4 of us, goes on a trip, we have one bag, the main bag, sometimes we'll have a little satchel or something as well, but basically one bag that fits on our back. Okay? It's great to be sitting in a cafe in Lisbon watching a group of tourists with their rolly bags on cobblestones and having to tell my 12, now 13-year-old son that he should stop shouting out, "A backpack seems like a good idea now, doesn't it?" He's cheeky. I have no idea where he gets it from. Okay. I would like a lighter load on my back.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
She doesn't know. I actually normally unplug when I'm streaming. I forgot. Let's hope that there's no family announcements. The Go Narrative headquarters is right here in the heart of Woodget headquarters. So anyway, am I being pushed or am I being pulled? Well, there's a bit of both actually. Not only would I like a lighter load, why am I doing this in the first place? I'm doing it for the passion of photography and the passion of documenting my family's life for my family. It's kind of what I do. Family, my mum, when she was still alive, would say that I was the family reporter. Okay, so your customers, your prospects could have one, the other, or both of these things that are pressuring them. One or the other, they are not either or, okay? And emotions are at the core of this. They are not fluffy, they are functional. You can use them to your advantage to connect better with your customers, with your investors, with your team. Taking the time to understand what somebody is going through is going to result in you being a more empathetic leader. The more you use the power of 3D Story, the more empathy you will have, the more you will care, because the more you will understand. And if you seek to move people to act, guarantee you, a carrot is better than a stick, and honey is better than vinegar. I have actually worked, not only clients who are startups, but have done equity-based work for startups and have worked for founders who just don't get that. And those companies never made it. And the beauty of the power of 3D Story is it gives you a tool that does that as well. What a great win. This is what I said about the power of 3D Story. packs a lot in, okay? Not just in terms of telling better stories, not just in terms of understanding better stories, but also in terms of the knock-on effects of what happens when you do this. Right, well, this has been an absolute hoot. I love talking about this stuff because if I can help you just one little bit, then I am getting closer to my mission to help every business person not just tell better stories, but to live, embrace, and understand. It's why I love to say, make your story, live your story, tell your story. So make your story, live your story, tell your story. What is next? What should you think about doing? Well, you've got this. Keep this in mind, okay? I've mentioned not only the framework itself, but the website and the playbook. You can get the book, you can get the first chapter on our website, and you can also get the book from Amazon. But even more importantly, what I want you to do next, within 72 hours, I want you to have done this 3 times and then told it to 3 people. I want you to think about what story you will tell tomorrow. And if you do that magic of 3s, just like the 3D framework, Power of 3D Story, you will remember this. What story will you tell tomorrow? Look at your own story. Look at your team story. Look at a story in your family. Look at the camera story example that I gave you. Doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to be complicated, okay? And do that 3 times. And when you tell it, tell them about the Power of 3D Story. And then you will 100% remember this, and you will never forget it. It will be a part of your operating system. And it's a natural fit because story is a part of our operating system. Now, you can reach out to me. You go to the website, of course, but DM me. I answer all my DMs on LinkedIn. If we're not connected, reach out and tell me that you were on the stream. I get far too many connections with no note, and those generally don't get accepted because there's just too many of them. I need context, please. So put that note in there, connect on LinkedIn, and I will reply. And you can also email. You can reach out for help at gnhelp@gonarrative.com. A little bit of a bonus in there, by the way, is a tip for stopping spam, and that is don't just put normal words at your company. Mix it up a little bit, make it harder for those lists that increasingly AI spamming is using. Thank you so much for joining today. I can't wait to hear what story you're going to tell tomorrow. And you can tell me first if you want as well. And I'm excited to hear that. And I'm excited for the success that you're going to get going forwards. Thank you. And I'll see you next week on Friday's stream. Bye for now.